Okay. Okay. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to this live edition of the Military Wire with Mike Schindler. I am, in fact, Mike Schindler, and this is where we interview some of America's most elite men and women who have served this country. And we also bring on some amazing guests who are doing some groundbreaking breakthroughs, essentially, in the areas of neuroscience, science, brain health, mental health. And we do that so that you, our listener, can really figure out some steps that you need to take personally so that you can move yourself ahead. So before I get into today's guest with Dr. Paige Roberts, who I'm very excited to introduce to you, I want to put a shout out to our sponsor, Bone Frog Cellars and Bone Frog Coffee. If you have not tried Bone Frog, you must try it. The coffee is exceptional. It's direct from the farms. It is amazing. And here's the cool thing. The founder, CEO, Tim Cruikshank, served 25 years with the Navy SEAL teams, and he now does this in order to give back to the community. So a portion of the proceeds go back to other organizations that help the families of military and veteran families. So a big shout out to Bone Frog. Be sure you sample their coffee. It's amazing. As a matter of fact, I've got it in my cup right now. So it'll get me through the interview. Not that I need it, because our guest today, Dr. Paige Roberts, is an expert in her field in neuroscience, in sports psychology. She is a doctorate in integrated medicine at Quantum University. She has got a resume that will blow you away, and she's doing some things in the area of neuroscience, which is certainly interesting to me, especially with some of the stuff that we've done in the film industry on how to get people mentally healthy. And the reason we're addressing that topic today, in the holiday seasons, whether it's December or January, it tends to be where people can fall into a depression, into a depressive state. Recent studies have shown that a lot of people are feeling anxious, frustrated, depressed. And so I want to address that today with Dr. Paige Roberts. So Dr. Roberts, welcome to the Military Wire.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excellent opportunity to get this information out, and love what you're doing here.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, I'm honored to have you on, and I really want to talk a little bit more about your background so that you can frame that for our audience. But why don't you start with what got you intrigued, interested in this whole industry of neuroscience, sports therapy? Start there.
Oh boy. I mean, my whole life I've always been into health. I started going to buying supplements that I'd read did such a, so nootropics or something of that nature, probably 25 years ago. I'm 39 now. So I really started getting interested in enhancing, right? And so in the beginning, it was really just enhancing the body. I went on to run cross country at Colorado Mesa University, and I got a degree in exercise science. And I thought, oh, the body's everything. Like, oh, that's all. You have a fit body. You can exercise any emotional way. Everything, everything's good there. And then I ended up getting into a car accident and right out of undergrad. And I was working as an EKG technician, telemetry monitor at a hospital, and pursuing a master's in exercise science. And I started to experience post-concussion syndrome symptoms, and I didn't know what they were at the time, and no one really knew what they were at the time. And it was really brutal. I went to multiple experts, and my biggest symptom was I couldn't sleep. And now we know that 80% of people who have concussions have sleep disturbances. Back to then, we did not know these things. So it kind of set me on this quest, and the fact that every single thing I was doing physiologically to better myself and to get healthier was not working. And so that's when I started turning to psychology. And I actually went and sought help from a social worker in sport, and he was doing this altered state trauma reprocessing therapy, and told me that he could really help me because beyond the car accident when I was 22, I'd also crashed in a school bus. We were headed to my first swim team meet when I was 18 in Colorado. So we did a 360 and went off one side and rolled. It was very icy that morning. So it got me to kind of realize that between both of those events that my nervous system was at its max. It was in sympathetic state, which is our fight, flight, freeze, on alert cortisol states. And that's why I wasn't sleeping. My unconscious, conscious, so unconscious being the body, its experience, and then the conscious experience, the cognitive anxiety, as we'd say in sports psychology, they were playing off of each other, and there was no way to really get me out of sympathetic nervous system aside from going back through the traumas and reprocessing them fully to reset my homeostasis down to more of a parasympathetic, so a calmer one that would allow for sleep, that would allow for the production of DHEA.
So is this like immersion therapy? So, like in veterans with combat, and, they go through traumatic experiences, and it could happen over and over and over again, right? So you could be on multiple deployments, or you do multiple missions, and you're experiencing different things, getting different inputs, and suddenly you're elevated oftentimes. So is this immersion therapy in some ways?
Well, we call it exposure therapy in a way. So
okay.
You can go back through the memory network and reprocess any of the emotions that did not have the space to be processed, because that's the problem. When we go through trauma, it happens so quickly, we just freeze the emotions and the body's experience in place. And so when you're working with athletes, it's really evident, right? When they crash or hurt themselves or have a surgery or something, their times, they'll actually slow down. Their reaction time will not be as on point. So we know that that's the body arousal, the unconscious aspect of the body, muscle guarding. So you can actually measure these things. And I have a QEEG that I look at brain reaction time and regionally within the brain, given a sound or a visual cue, and how quickly you're responding to that. So we can actually measure that it puts your body into this fight, flight, freezy state. When you're talking about going back with veterans, I had an exceptional client yesterday that we were able to get his voltage in his brain back up to normal when it comes to past trauma within, multiple tours. And then also just the trauma of any of the bombs that had went off within his vicinity, because that's going to be more harsh on the brain than even just hitting the brain or the contra cua of the brain bouncing around in the skull. So it's highly effective with both athletes, both military individuals, and just everyone in general. We've all had trauma. We've all had things that have ramped up our nervous system and reset our homeostasis. But, again and again, I see that integrating in these therapies, an individual's nervous system will reset, will come back down to the parasympathetic and get us in flow state most of the time, the alpha, as opposed to being up in this sympathetic nervous system state. I mean, you probably couldn't have convinced me, being such a science-minded person and not very, as I'd say, mushy, squishy, emotional athlete, until I did the therapies myself and it calmed my nervous system. And I was just like, all right, there's something here. And I think that a lot of times when we're looking for things to calm anxiety, get us out of a depression, we just really don't even know what it feels like to not be depressed or anxious.
Yeah, right.
Therefore, we don't even know what technique to use. We don't know who to go to. We think, okay, well, counseling, talk therapy, and really anymore, talk therapy is so old that when we're talking, we're just talking about the cognitive anxiety stuff. And we're just kind of, like baking it into our nervous system the more times that we talk about it, if we're not in the altered state, and allowing for the whole brain and the body to release the experience. And again, these were concepts. I'm like, okay, well, this is interesting. So I went on and got my master's in social work, like the individual who'd helped me with this technique and who had created the technique. Dr. David Grand was who created the technique. And it kind of went into this just like, oh, wow, this is a whole nother world compared to the physiology world, where we just sit there and be like, oh, well, you're bonking, or your lactate threshold's high, and that's why things aren't going well. And it's like, no, there's another piece here. And so it was really that mental piece. The altered state reprocessing therapies, if we look back, I mean, even Freud was fascinated with hypnotherapy in France when they were working with that modality, even back in the 1800s, for crying out loud. So this stuff's been around a while. It's just a matter of, educating individuals on what it is. It's pretty brief work. I don't see people forever. I see it about 10, 12 sessions. We can really calm down the nervous system, get it back where it needs to be, or regulated, as we would call it. But yeah, so it's kind of what got me into doing what I'm doing. But there were other aspects when I was a freshman at Colorado Mesa. One of the quarterbacks had completed suicide. And this was when we were still having tackle in practices and all these other, now, of course, we don't have multiple physical plays in college football during practice, certainly not in high school now. So I started to link things together because when I was going through my post-concussion syndrome at 22 and then thinking about Dustin who had completed suicide, and I was like, wait a second, like he was not doing well in school, he wasn't sleeping well, like all these things were going on and we all knew these things were going on, but no one really knew what they were. And so I was like, wait, that was post-concussion syndrome. Oh my gosh. So it started to put things, aligning things and got me very curious. And so after I finished my master's, I went on and just studied under some of the best out there that were trying to really tackle post-concussion syndrome and, the mental, physical traumas when we talk about sport.
Yeah.
So that was a really fun process when I first started my practice 9 years ago, was going to the American Academy of Neurology sports concussion conferences and learning from Dr. Jeffrey Kuchar, who started that whole wing and works with the US ski team and the NFL Players Association, all that cool stuff. And so it was really amazing to learn from him. And it really validated that, hey, yeah, we need to be doing these altered state reprocessing therapies. He was all about the eye movement desensitization reprocessing, breath work, the hypnotherapy, focus mindfulness, and somatic experience. And that's kind of what encompasses brain spotting, as theory builds on theory, and you just keep combining the techniques. And then another individual that I came across, it was about the time that the movie Concussion was out. And so the guy who played Mickey Collins was Alec Baldwin in the movie, but Dr. Mickey Collins out at the Pittsburgh Medical Center works with the Penguins and Steelers. And, he's a neuropsychologist. And so he was creating this whole protocol at the time. And I was super excited about it because no one had had a complete protocol besides just rest when it came to the concussions. But in his work has been profound because he has a whole treatment protocol and people are getting better. Of course, number one primary thing, psychotherapy, right? We have to talk to an individual first. They need to know the expectations of what's going to go on. They need to believe they're going to get better. Placebo effect is still pretty high considering how powerful the brain is. You need to kind of do some neural priming is what I call it with individuals, is that you have to believe that it's going to work and understand what it's doing. And I think
so walk me through that step. So we've got audience members or listeners that are going, okay, I'm peaked. I'm, elevated all the time. I can't sleep, right? I'm binge watching everything. I get maybe 2, 3, 4 hours of sleep a night. I feel like I'm always on the line or outside the wire, right? So tell me the steps. Is it, okay, the first step is we need to talk about this and you actually need to accept that this is going to work for you.
Yes.
Right. Is that step one?
Yeah. And so really how I introduce it to individual is that we must get you into the altered state. So I have you listen to bilateral sound. So it's sound going back and forth between each of the ears and your headphones. And I can do this stuff via Zoom too, when it comes to this technique. So I have you listen to that. That drops us into our body, so the unconscious, and allows for information because, again, neural pathways within our body are the same as our brain. They carry information, they carry experience, they carry memories. There's no way they don't. They're all interly connected and linked together and fire spontaneously. So when we put someone in the altered state with the bilateral, the back and the forth, it allows for us to drop into this energy field also and let other experiences and memories come up that we are not cognitively aware of, which is really kind of what's shocking to most people. They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even remember that time that I almost drowned in the pool when I was 7. I'm like, yeah, your body did. So we do that. Then oftentimes, I'll do it one way or the other when it comes to manipulating the eyes. right? So if we want to cover one eye or the other to begin with when we're trying to access and fully reprocess these memories, because the eyes operate independently. The brain is 80% visual, so it's our number one area that we can manipulate when it comes to bringing up memories. So if you cover one eye and you ask someone about, okay, well, tell me, from childhood to about 10, any of the negative things that occurred. Individuals will find memory networks and go into memories. You cover the other eye, different memories will pop up.
No way, really? Is
Yes.
that right? Oh my gosh.
It's
So
pretty
I got to try that. Yeah. That's interesting.
So that's
Yeah.
another piece of this, and that's that eye movement desensitization reprocessing, that we know that when we're manipulating the eyes that we're changing the brain. And EMDR has been proven effective with veterans, but again, EMDR is just a little older. These are theory built on theory, so it's has all the great things of EMDR, all the great things of hypnotherapy, but it's just more advanced. And then I have an individual utilize a pen or pencil or pointers or whatever that looks like. And I'm having you track where you feel sensation in your body, because when we touch it with not our finger, but another source, it allows for the energy to go there, because where our mind goes, the energy flows, or where stimulus is, the energy is. And it allows for any of that taut held energy to just be released, because it's being accessed, it's being identified. So as someone, if they're telling me about a bicycle accident that they had, I would have them tell me where that's showing up in their body, that muscle guarding, that body arousal piece that the body had to guard and brace when that trauma occurred. And so they'll just follow where they're feeling sensation showing up in their body, and it's allowing for the body to just let it go, to release it. It's, again, all this is a little, people don't want to believe these things, but that's the foundation of somatic experience, is that, hey, we're holding on to experience in our fascia, we need to release it. And if we don't acknowledge it, it's never going to go.
Okay, so I want to address that, and we're coming up on our time too, because this is so fascinating to me. We could probably talk hours on this stuff. Okay, so first of all, I've got to be aware, right? Is that right? So
Yes.
I got to be aware of this. And then I've got to seek help. So tell me how, if I say, okay, you know what, all this other stuff is not working. So how do people get in touch with you? Let's put it there. Cause I've toured your office. You've got all these amazing contraptions. Some of it seems like weird science, but I will tell you, having gone through it, that I had like this inner peace when I was done with it. Right. So I'm a testimony essentially to saying, hey, you know what, it seems weird, but I will tell you, there's some interesting stuff that happens. There's some cool breakthroughs. So how do people get in touch with you? Because I think for us as a country, as an individual, as a community, we need to experience these breakthroughs. So step one, I need to understand that I probably need to get this fixed. Step two, I need to book a time with you. And then you're going to talk me through it. And then we're going to kind of go through this experience. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I really have people do the prep work of writing out a whole life list of the things that didn't serve them, the negative things that have occurred in their life, so that we can be sure that we are addressing all of those. And then whatever experiences come up, that we have stuffed away. So that would be another big piece in this work.
Okay.
And it's not easy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy. So tell me, how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's robertsneurotraining.com, as well as I have my clients text me when we're booking appointments. So 970-875-4591. And again, I do very brief work with this modality because it is so effective. We only need about 10 to 12 sessions really to fully reprocess these things. And then the other piece of it is that I utilize this bilateral sound that also has frequency medicine in it. That's the alpha wave. Well, alpha wave is our flow. It's our no mind zone. It's our intuitive play, all that. And plus it's very good for, tissue recovery, alpha is. So my sounds, I have individuals purchase those, download those. But the work that we do together, we're training your brain and body to do this on its own. So you're able to do it later on your own.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah.
So that's the thing. Yeah. So that's one of the other pieces I wanted to really say here, is that I'm teaching you and in training your brain, and then you do this on your own therefore after.
I
So,
love that. But you're open to walking with somebody for a while, though.
oh yeah.
Correct.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
as long as someone needs me. I mean, that's the thing about being a healer is that, you show up when people need you and you continue to hold them until they're ready to essentially walk on their own.
I love that. So, Dr. Roberts, give your website again so people can get in touch with you.
So yeah, it's www.robertsneurotraining.com.
Wonderful. Gosh, thank you. I got to say, I love this. We could keep talking about this subject forever. And maybe we'll have you back on the show. But for our audience members, please be sure you check that out. Don't sit there and stew in your depression, your anxiety. If you're elevated, address it. The first is awareness. The next is taking action. And so be sure you take action on this. Dr. Roberts, thank you for being on this show. We totally appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. If I can help one person, I'm happy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.